Kamavacara Sobhana Citta. Good morning. Today is the 31st of January, 1998. Today we're going to be discussing Kamavacara Sobhana Citta, or wholesome consciousness. We need to understand the meaning of these words. Kamavacara consists of two words, kama and avacara. Kama refers to subjective sensual craving or sensuous objects, such as forms, sounds, odors, tastes and contact. It also refers to the 11 types of sentient existence. These 11 types or realms of sensuous existence include the 4 states of misery, or woeful states, hell, animal kingdom, ghost sphere, and the host of demons, the human realm, and the 6 celestial, or heaven, realms. We call these the 11 realms of sentient existence, or kama. Now, we go to avacara, which means frequently moves about. Kamavacara refers to that which mostly moves about the 11 sensuous realms, or sense spheres. We have 24 types of Kamavacara Sobhana Citta, 8 Kusala Citta, 8 Vipaka Citta, and 8 Kiriya Citta. All 24 of these types of consciousness mostly move about in the sensual realm. That's why we call it Kamavacara. We can sometimes find this consciousness in other spheres of life, but it mostly moves about in the sensuous realm. The next word, Sobhana, means beautiful. Beautiful refers to wholesome consciousness that yields good qualities and is connected with blameless roots. We have 6 roots, right? 3 of them, attachment, ill will, and delusion or ignorance, are bad. And 3 of them are good, so we call them blameless roots. They are the opposites of the bad roots. The blameless roots are alobha, non-attachment or generosity, adosa, loving kindness, and amoha, knowledge. So these types of consciousness are connected with blameless roots, such as generosity, loving kindness and knowledge. That's why we call it Sobhana. And lastly, as you're already aware, Citta means mind or consciousness. When we study all of this word by word, it's not hard. It's very easy, actually. We're learning everything here, not just Abhidhamma. We're learning culture and the Pali language too. Now you know what Kamavacara Sobhana Citta means. Kusala Citta. As we start to look more closely at the first 8 types of Kamavacara Sobhana Citta, we don't need to spend so much time on translation because we've already learned what most of it means. 1. Somanasa Sahagata Jnana Sampayuta Asankarika, or consciousness accompanied by pleasure, associated with knowledge, unprompted. 2. Somanasa Sahagata Jnana Sampayuta Sasankarika, or consciousness accompanied by pleasure, associated with knowledge, prompted. 3. Somanasa Sahagata Jnana Vipayuta Asankarika, or consciousness accompanied by pleasure, unassociated with knowledge, unprompted. 4. Somanasa Sahagata Jnana Vipayuta Sasankarika, or consciousness accompanied by pleasure, unassociated with knowledge, prompted. 5. Upeka Sahagata Jnana Sampayuta Asankarika, or consciousness accompanied by indifference, associated with knowledge, unprompted. 6. Upeka Sahagata Jnana Sampayuta Sasankarika, or consciousness accompanied by indifference, associated with knowledge, prompted. 7. Upeka Sahagata Jnana Vipayuta Asankarika, or consciousness accompanied by indifference, unassociated with knowledge, unprompted. 8. Upeka Sahagata Jnana Vipayuta Sasankarika, or consciousness accompanied by indifference, unassociated with knowledge, prompted. When you already know Lobha Mula Citta, this group of 8 is easy because you just substitute jnana for diti. Otherwise, they are the same in name. We still need examples, though, to understand what these 8 types of consciousness actually mean. All good acts are done by one of these 8 types of beautiful wholesome consciousness. Now, let's look at some examples. The first type is Somanasa Sahagata Jnana Sampayuta Asankarika. It is easy to remember its 3 characteristics, with pleasure, with knowledge, unprompted. Sometimes we might go to the airport to travel out of state and see people walking around asking for donations. They might be working with a veterans group, a group for disabled people, or perhaps with a church organization, and you can sometimes see people walk by without even thinking about making a donation. Maybe they don't believe in the law of cause and effect, or maybe they toss a quarter in the bucket and keep going without giving it any thought. What is the person feeling in that moment? If you feel happy about making a donation, it's Somanasa Sahagata, accompanied by pleasure. Do you understand what you're doing in the context of the law of cause and effect? If you do, it is Jnana Sampayuta, or consciousness associated with knowledge. If you don't, it is Jnana Vipayuta, or consciousness unassociated with knowledge. And for this type of consciousness, Asankarika is making the donation right away, without anyone prompting you to do it. The second type is Somanasa Sahagata Jnana Sampayuta Sasankarika, with pleasure, with knowledge, prompted. Here, you're very happy because you like to make donations, and you understand that what you're doing is good in the context of the law of cause and effect. But this time, it is Sasankarika. Maybe you walked by the person the first time without paying any attention, or perhaps you second-guessed whether you had enough money to make a donation. But finally, you decided to make a donation, so you induced yourself. As another example of Sasankarika, perhaps the person kept walking by you several times and then you finally made a donation so that he would go away. Here, you were induced to donate by another person's actions, prompted. The third type is Somanasa Sahagata Jnana Vipayuta Asankarika, with pleasure, without knowledge, unprompted. Sometimes people will bring their kid with them to the temple. When the kid comes in, he sits down right away without being prompted and pays respect to the Buddha statue, the monks, and elderly people. The kid is very happy. But does he understand what he's doing in the context of the law of cause and effect? No, he doesn't understand, so it is jnana vipayuta. In this example, wholesome consciousness has arisen in the kid's mind. It is with pleasure, without knowledge, and unprompted. The fourth type is somanasa sahagata jnana vipayuta sasankarika, with pleasure, without knowledge, prompted. The kid in this example is happy to come to the temple, but he doesn't want to pay respect to the monks until the parents hold his hand and tell him to bow. In other words, the kid required prompting. He's happy to be there but he lacks understanding and requires inducement. With these first four types, you can see that although they are all beautiful wholesome consciousness, they are of differing levels and have different power. Some of the kusala citta may have pleasure, some may have a neutral feeling, some may have understanding, some may lack understanding, some may be unprompted, and others may be prompted. In all of our daily activities, we can examine ourselves and determine whether our consciousness is wholesome or unwholesome. The fifth type is upeka sahagata jnana sampayuta asankarika, with indifference, with knowledge, unprompted. When you make a donation as in the airport example, you don't have so much pleasure, you're more indifferent. You know the law of cause and effect, that is, you know it's good to donate. And no one induced you, so you just went up right away and gave some money. Maybe you have the indifferent feeling because you've donated many times. It's not a strange thing for you to do, so there is just a neutral feeling. The sixth type is upeka sahagata jnana sampayuta sasankarika, with indifference, with knowledge, prompted. Here, when you make the donation your feeling is neutral and you understand the law of cause and effect, but maybe you had to think about donating many times before you finally did it. Or maybe you didn't do it until someone induced you. The seventh type is upeka sahagata jnana vipayuta asankarika, with indifference, without knowledge, unprompted. Here, maybe you make the donation with a neutral feeling and without understanding the law of cause and effect, but it is done right away without requiring prompting. Sometimes a parent will give their kid $1 or $2 and then bring them to the temple. The kid will see everyone else donating, so they pull out their $1 or $2 and donate it. But you can look at their face and see that they're not so happy, just a neutral feeling. They are just following what other people are doing. And although they donated the money without anyone forcing them to do it, they did it without understanding. The eighth type is upeka sahagata jnana vipayuta sasankarika, with indifference, without knowledge, prompted. This is like when the kid comes to the temple and doesn't want to do anything but the parents prompt him to pay respect to the monks. And so he pays respect, but he's not happy, just neutral. The kid doesn't understand that it is good and meritorious to pay respect to a monk. And in this example, the kid required the parents' prompting to do it. This is wholesome consciousness too, but the power, the level, the energy is low. Depending on our karma, our wholesome consciousness will yield differing results. Why are people different? Why do we have different faces, different shapes, different bodies, and different knowledge? Everyone is different. Who makes us different? Our karma. And here, we've been talking about wholesome karma. So, as I said before, all good acts are done by one of these 8 types of wholesome consciousness. The 10 bases of meritorious action. I'd like to talk now about the 10 bases of meritorious action. 1. Generosity. 2. Morality. 3. Meditation. 4. Humility or reverence. 5. Service to others. 6. Transference of merit. According to our Buddhist practice, after we have done meritorious deeds, we will pour water in a symbolic gesture of sharing the goodness of our deeds with others. While doing so, we might reflect, whatever good deeds I've done today, may all beings be happy and share in that merit. This is one kind of meritorious action. 7. Rejoicing in others' merit. When someone else practices generosity, observes precepts, or sits in meditation, it's good if we feel happy about that. This is rejoicing in their good actions. We feel no jealousy at all. Normally, we feel jealous, which is unwholesome, when someone maybe does something better than us. But, here, we're happy. This is one kind of meritorious action. 8. Hearing the right teaching. Like, right now, we're studying the right teaching. This is one kind of meritorious action. 9. Teaching the doctrine, or showing the truth. Even if it's not specifically the Buddha's teaching, it is one kind of meritorious deed if we show the truth to others. 10. Straightening one's views. This last one means forming correct views. Now, as we study Buddhist philosophy, we are helping ourselves have right thoughts. We gain merit by doing these 10 things. Let's explore them in a bit more detail. As we study Abhidhamma, which is the Buddha's highest teaching, what number is this? It's number 8, right? It is hearing the doctrine. In every moment that we engage in hearing the doctrine, beautiful wholesome consciousness arises again and again and again. For those teaching the doctrine, like me, we gain merit too. That's why I'm very happy to do this. The last one, straightening one's views, has to do with the many philosophies and belief systems in the world today. People have individual beliefs and perspectives, but it's important that they are not wrong. If you have wrong view, your actions will be wrong actions. In other words, misconduct. By straightening one's views, we are forming correct action. We can try to gather good points from the world's various religions and use them to improve our lives. This is called straightening one's view. This is also one kind of meritorious action. I realize we're bouncing around a little bit here, but the fourth one is called humility or reverence. We pay respect to those who are worthy of respect, like the Buddha, his doctrine, his disciples, monks, our parents, and our teachers. This is one kind of meritorious action, but if we don't understand why we're doing it, that is, if we lack jnana, then it's wholesome but unassociated, vipayuta, with knowledge. That's why we should learn all of this. I used to explain to my young students the importance of paying respect to people like our elders, our teachers, our parents, and monks too. Why should we pay respect to monks? When you come to pay respect to monks, you should be happy, with pleasure, and understand why it's good to do so. Jnana sampayuta. If you feel happy but lack understanding, jnana vipayuta, instead of the first type of kusala citta, you'll have the third type. See? The merit is lower, so we should understand why it's good to pay respect to monks. Whenever we come to the temple, we should understand why we do the various things that we do here. This is forming correct views, or straightening one's views. So, exactly what is it about a monk that makes him worthy of us paying respect to him? In other words, why is it good for you to pay respect to me before you leave here? It's important to know that you're not paying respect to my body or my name. Rather, you are paying respect to my good conduct, my morality, my precepts, because I keep more precepts than you, as lay people, do. Lay people are expected to keep only 5 precepts, but as a monk I have 227 precepts that I keep. So because my precepts are more than yours, you pay respect to my morality. Of the factors of the Noble Eightfold Path, right speech, right action, and right livelihood have to do with sila, morality. You're paying respect to that very morality that is an essential part of the Noble Eightfold Path. Depending on situations in one's life, a layperson may have to lie from time to time, right? Lying is not right speech. For me, though, I practice right speech every day. I talk all day long but only use good speech. That's morality. I don't have to lie, I just talk about good things. It's not necessary for me to lie about anything. As for right action, a layperson's environment, business, or other circumstances in life may sometimes force him to do things that aren't good or wholesome, that are wrong action. But I don't have to do that, it's not necessary. I just do right action every day. I pray for everyone, I do chanting, I practice sitting and walking meditation, I study, I learn, I write books. All of these things are good actions. And for livelihood for lay people, responsibilities at work may require a person to earn their livelihood in ways that aren't wholesome. But I don't have livelihood, a job. I depend on my devotees to offer me food every day. You might have to go to a restaurant, but I don't have to think about that, so a monk's livelihood is very pure. We just depend on what people bring for us to eat. We just have one uniform to wear too, so we don't have to worry about the color or style of the clothes we wear. So if we compare the speech, action, and livelihood of monks to lay people, we can see that the monks have the higher So we pay respect to the monk's higher morality. We should understand this point. Of the factors of the Noble Eightfold Path, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration have to do with tranquility, samadhi. We are also paying respect to the tranquility that is an essential part of the path. As monks, we do only good things every day. We practice the best we can, we study, we learn or teach, and we practice meditation. Every day, all the time. This is right effort. Right mindfulness is being aware every day of physical and mental activities. We try to be aware all the time, so our mindfulness is better than a layperson. And what is good concentration? A monk doesn't have to think about the past or the future or worry about anything. But all of you, as lay people, you have to worry about what you need to wear, where you have to go, what you have to say. This is necessary for lay people. And while a lay person sits in meditation for 15 or 20 minutes, they spend almost all of that time thinking about stuff. They can't concentrate their mind. For monks, though, we don't have to worry about anything, so our concentration is better than a lay person. So, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. These three factors comprise the tranquility, or samadhi, aspect of the Noble Eightfold Path. Monks have better tranquility than lay people, so lay people should pay respect to monks because of their superior tranquility. And the wisdom component of the Noble Eightfold Path consists of right understanding and right thinking. Most lay people have very little time to study, learn and practice the Dhamma, but we monks have been practicing for many years, more than 30 years for me at this point. We have learned many scriptures, and not just Buddhist scriptures either, other religions too. So we have right understanding, especially about the law of cause and effect. We also understand the difference between wholesome and unwholesome, good and bad, right and wrong. This is right understanding. What about right thinking? Most of you think a lot about sensual objects. You want to watch TV or a movie or a show. Or maybe you want to listen to music, enjoy the nice sense of perfume, eat tasty foods, wear attractive clothes, and enjoy a nice body massage. These are sensual objects. Lay people think about this stuff all the time. But monks don't have to think about stuff like that. There's no TV, no music. The two approaches, lay life and monk life, are quite different, right? You go to parties, go to work, but I just get to stay here all the time. Socializing is necessary for you. You even need to beautify your body, your face, in order to be presentable at work, right? And you have to spend time thinking about and preparing to do all of this. Maintenance. Monks don't have to think about these sensual objects. We don't think about gain and loss like you do. So, monks have right thinking, as well as right understanding. These two factors comprise the wisdom component of the Noble Eightfold Path. This is why we pay respect to monks 3 times. The first time is for his superior morality, the second time is for his superior tranquility, and the third time is for his superior wisdom. When we understand this, there is jnana sampayutta, and you'll feel happy about doing it. Paying respect to someone who has earned your respect is a good opportunity for you to gain merit. So, we pay respect with pleasure, with understanding, and unprompted. When we do, the first type of beautiful wholesome consciousness arises. See, this is very important for everyone to understand. When you pay respect without understanding, there is jnana vipayutta. This, the third type of beautiful wholesome consciousness, is lower than the first type. We should understand what we're doing. Vipaka Citta. So, we've been discussing Kamavacara Kusala Citta, or wholesome consciousness. With wholesome consciousness as the cause, what's the result? Sahetuka Kamavacara Vipaka Citta. Sahetuka means, with roots in the sensuous sphere. In name, the 8 types of Sahetuka Kamavacara Vipaka Citta are the same as the 8 types of Kamavacara Kusala Citta, i.e., Somanasa Sahagata Jnana Sampayutta Asankarika, and so forth. They are the results, vipaka, of wholesome consciousness. So we're talking now about Kamavacara resultant consciousness with roots. When you do something good via your physical actions, verbal actions, or mental actions, one of the 8 types of Kusala Citta arise. As a result, vipaka, resultant, consciousness occurs in this present life or in the next existence. That is, there will be one of the 8 types of Sahetuka Kamavacara Vipaka Citta. So, how many types of wholesome resultant consciousness have we already talked about? 8, right? We talked about the 8 types of rootless wholesome resultant consciousness. Here, we have the 8 types of Sahetuka Kamavacara Vipaka Citta. Altogether, we have these 16 types of consciousness that are the result of wholesome consciousness. We'll talk in detail about this later, but for now, if the first type of Kusala Citta, Somanasa Sahagata Jnana Sampayuta Asankarika, arises at death, it will produce the first type of Sahetuka Kamavacara Vipaka Citta when you are reborn. And since your rebirth, or relinking, consciousness would be associated with knowledge, Jnana Sampayuta, if you practice meditation you can gain jhana, path or fruit, nibbana, in that life. In other words, if your rebirth consciousness is associated with knowledge, you can gain enlightenment. This is very important. On the other hand, if your rebirth consciousness is not associated with knowledge, you cannot gain enlightenment in that life even if you try very hard to practice meditation. It could happen in the following life, but definitely not in that life. Do you want to know whether your rebirth consciousness in this life was associated with knowledge? Do you know yourself? You practice meditation every day. Do you think you'll gain enlightenment in this life? You don't know yet, right? It is dependent upon our rebirth consciousness. At the moment of conception, when we take rebirth, we call the first thought when we come into this world rebirth or relinking consciousness. Those types of consciousness that are the result of wholesome consciousness are with knowledge if they are the first, second, fifth or sixth, right? If your rebirth consciousness was one of those 4 types, you can gain enlightenment in this life if you practice meditation. I think maybe you want to know whether you have a chance or not in this life. We have a way to know. Do you want to know? Without practicing meditation, there is no way to know what your rebirth consciousness was. But when we practice meditation, step by step we can begin to gain the 16 levels of insight knowledge, which we'll be discussing in detail later. As we practice meditation and gain good concentration, we'll know what is mind and what is matter, we'll know that we have only mind and matter, and we'll know that mind and matter are impermanent, suffering, and of a selfless nature. We'll understand all of this. We'll know that in every moment there's just mind and matter arising and passing away, moment by moment. At that level of knowing the arising and passing away of mind and matter, we will see at least one of 10 kinds of defilement of insight. Insight is wisdom, right? We may experience all 10 of these defilements, or maybe just some of them. If one of these 10 kinds of defilement of insight arise, that is, you experience one of them, then your rebirth consciousness was with wisdom. And if you continue your practice, you can gain enlightenment in this life. So now we should know what the 10 defilements of insight are. The 10 defilements of insight. 1. Illumination. Illumination means that when you sit in meditation, there will be light. Even if you sit in a dark room, when you close your eyes you'll see a light come out from your body or from elsewhere. When you open your eyes, though, it's still dark. We call this illumination. 2. Knowledge. Every physical or mental activity, you know right away that it just comes and disappears all the time. We call this insight, or vipassana, knowledge. It's not normal knowledge, instead, your knowledge will be very sharp. 3. Rapture. Your body may feel tingly or thrilled, or maybe tears will come out of your eyes while you sit in meditation. 4. Tranquility. Your mind and body feel very light and tranquil. You will experience this. Even if you sit on the floor for an hour or 2, you won't feel anything. You might think you've been sitting for just 40 or 50 minutes when it's actually been a few hours. Your mind and body will feel very light. 5. Pleasure. You'll feel very happy with this practice of meditation. 6. Confidence. You'll have more conviction in the Buddha, his teachings, and his disciples. And you'll feel so strongly about your confidence that you'll want to teach the Dhamma to others. 7. Exertion or effort. You won't want to sleep. Instead, you'll want to practice all the time. Your practice will be very active and with good effort. This isn't a normal kind of effort, it's more pronounced. 8. Mindfulness. You'll be mindful in every activity, aware of everything. Before, maybe you'd want to stand up or sit down or move about but didn't know your intentions. In other words, you lacked mindfulness. But now, you know your intentions and the movements of your body. You know everything with good mindfulness. 9. Equanimity. When you first started to practice meditation, you had to try so hard to fix your mind on the object and observe it. Now, equanimity means that you don't have to try so hard, it just feels automatic and very easy for you. 10. Delight. You may attach to any of these 10 things because they are new, strange experiences. You're delighted by them and become attached. These 10 kinds of things are called defilements of insight. If you're attached to any of these 10 things, your knowledge won't go higher, it will stop right there. It's very easy to get attached when we reach this stage, so we need a teacher who can guide us beyond this point in our meditation practice. We can generally pass this stage in a few days and it will not come again. So, we have to come across at least one of these 10 things. All of you here today have practiced meditation for a long time. Have you come across or experienced any of these? If so, then your rebirth consciousness was jnana sampayutta, or with knowledge. Keep trying. You can gain enlightenment in this life. Some people may experience all 10, while others may experience just a few of them. If you haven't come across any of them, it means you haven't reached this level yet, or it may be that your rebirth consciousness was jnana vipayutta, or without knowledge. Those whose rebirth consciousness was without knowledge cannot experience any of these 10 defilements of insight, and that's why they can't gain enlightenment in this life. It's very important that we know this for ourselves. Without practicing meditation, though, we won't know and we won't understand. Now we go to the third group of kamavacara sobhana citta, which is called sahetuka kamavacara kiriya citta. Kiriya citta. Kiriya means functional, so here we're talking about ineffective or inoperative consciousness. We have 8 types of functional consciousness in this group. They are the same in name as the other 2 groups of kamavacara sobhana citta. So, somanasa sahagata jnana sampayutta asankarika, and so on. We should understand that this functional consciousness belongs only to Buddhas and to arahants, only they experience this functional consciousness. Ordinary worldly people can experience just 2 specific types of functional consciousness, which we have already talked about. The 5 sense door adverting consciousness, or upeka sahagata panyukadvaravajana, and mind door adverting consciousness, or upeka sahagata manadvaravajana. Only these 2 types of functional consciousness can be experienced by everyone. The remaining types of functional consciousness can only be experienced by Buddhas and arahants. Why do they call it functional consciousness? Buddhas and arahants practice generosity and meditation just like we do. They help people too. For us, we would call this wholesome consciousness, right? But Buddhas and arahants don't have wholesome or unwholesome consciousness. Instead, we call it functional consciousness. Those who have attained the 4 stages of enlightenment, i.e., Buddhas and arahants, have eradicated all unwholesome consciousness. Nor do they experience the 8 kusala citta. Why? Since they have eradicated all fetters that bind oneself to existence, they do not accumulate fresh karma and will not have to be reborn again. There's no productive energy left for a Buddha or arahant to be reborn. Whatever they do, we just call it functional. They just do it, there's no result, and after they die, there's no more existence, their life stops. We call this inoperative or functional consciousness. We've been discussing kamavacara kusala citta, resultant consciousness, and kiriya, functional consciousness. In all, there are these 24 types of kamavacara sobhana citta. The last 2 groups, vipaka, resultant consciousness, and kiriya consciousness, are collectively called abhyakata consciousness. Of the 24 types of kamavacara sobhana citta, how many are jnana sampayutta? With kusala citta there are 4, with vipaka there are the same 4, and with functional there are also the same 4, so, 12 types are jnana sampayutta. These 12 are connected with 3 good roots: alobha, non-attachment or generosity; adosa, non-aversion or loving kindness; and amoha, non-delusion or knowledge. But we also have 12 types that are jnana vipayutta. They are connected with 2 good roots. There's no knowledge, but they have generosity and loving kindness. This is wholesome consciousness too, but without knowledge. Every day, if we are not being mindful and aware of physical and mental activities, it's mostly just unwholesome consciousness that arises over and over. Wholesome and unwholesome consciousness cannot arise together. If unwholesome consciousness arises, then wholesome consciousness will go away. So we should try to have wholesome consciousness arise. That's why we do good things, those 10 kinds of meritorious action that we talked about. They are all wholesome, as we have loving kindness and try to benefit others through our good physical, verbal, and even mental conduct. Wholesome consciousness arises over and over and over. But if you think about sensual objects and want to obtain them, then there is unwholesome consciousness rooted in attachment. If you want things but are unable to obtain them, or perhaps you're unsatisfied with something, then this is unwholesome consciousness rooted in ill will. Or maybe sometimes you have doubts about something, especially when you're practicing meditation and second-guessing the technique. You might find yourself thinking, maybe I'm doing this wrong. Why haven't I gained enlightenment yet? Doubting your technique is unwholesome consciousness rooted in delusion. We need to learn how to practice because when we do, we will know what we need to do in our meditation. Then we'll have no doubt. Another kind of unwholesome consciousness rooted in delusion or ignorance is restlessness. Your mind just wanders and thinks and imagines. Volition, satana or kama, associates with both wholesome and unwholesome consciousness. With all types of consciousness, actually. The kama of the last type of unwholesome consciousness, upeka sahagata udacha sampayuta, which is associated with restlessness, cannot produce rebirth consciousness in a woeful state. Restlessness can only be eradicated by an arahant, even an anagami still has it. So if you're sitting in meditation and find yourself thinking, I can't do meditation, I just sit here thinking and my mind wandering, don't be disappointed. Even stream enterers, once returners, and non-returners deal with restlessness. Among the three main groups of consciousness we've studied so far, we have 12 types of unwholesome consciousness, 18 types of rootless consciousness, and 24 types of kamavacara sobhana citta. We call these 54 types of consciousness kamavacara citta. Of these 54 types of consciousness, how many are somanasa? We should know this. In lobha there are 4, in rootless there are 2, and in this last group there are 12, so altogether there are 18 types of somanasa. This is consciousness with pleasure, right? And of these 54 types of consciousness, how many are upeka? 32. There are 6 in unwholesome consciousness, with 4 lobha mula citta and 2 moha mula citta, 14 in rootless consciousness, and 12 in kamavacara sobhana citta. How many are domanasa? Only 2. What about painful consciousness? 1. Happiness consciousness? 1. So, altogether, 54 types of consciousness. We should know this. We've studied these 5 feelings, right? We have 18 types with pleasurable feeling, 2 types with displeasurable feeling, 32 types with neutral feeling, 1 type with painful feeling, and 1 type with happiness. So, we have these 5 kinds of feeling. How many types of consciousness are asankarika? 17. There are 5 types in unwholesome consciousness and 12 types in kamavacara sobhana citta. In the same way, how many are sasankarika? 17. Out of these 54 types of consciousness, how many are abhyakata? In rootless consciousness, we have resultant and functional, right? So, 18 types there, and 16 types in kamavacara sobhana citta. Altogether, there are 34 types of abhyakata. How many types of resultant consciousness are there? There are 15 in rootless consciousness and 8 in kamavacara sobhana citta, so there are 23 types. Even Buddhas and Arahants can experience all 23 types of vipaka consciousness. How many types of functional consciousness are there? There are 3 in rootless and 8 in kamavacara sobhana citta, so there are 11. So, there are 12 types of unwholesome consciousness, 8 types of wholesome consciousness, 23 types of resultant consciousness, and 11 types of functional consciousness. Altogether, that is 54 types of consciousness. We should know this. Any questions? Q. Sayadaw, if an arahant has eradicated the moha fetter, how can there be jnana vipayuta with the 4 types of kiriya citta you talked about? Just like us, an arahant may sometimes meditate with mindfulness without realizing the nature of mind and matter. Although this is jnana vipayuta, it is wholesome. And although arahants and Buddhas are not always knowing, they are normally jnana sampayuta even without thinking, contemplating, or otherwise considering something. Jnana vipayuta here does not mean there is moha citta. Mindfulness is always associated with beautiful consciousness, but there may not always be panya, wisdom. Q. You mentioned that we can only have one type of consciousness arise at a time. Isn't it possible to, say, go somewhere for a cup of coffee and a sandwich and have more than one type of consciousness, maybe wholesome and unwholesome, at the same time? Could you be attached to the good flavor of the food but also have wholesome consciousness while you're eating it, knowing that the food is in fact delicious and of good quality? According to Buddhist philosophy, we should not attach to our food. Instead, we should reflect that it is necessary to eat in order to survive. Then, we'll have right understanding while eating. The Buddha said that we can practice eating meditation too. While chewing, just concentrate on your chewing and make a mental note. Chewing, chewing. When you swallow, concentrate on your swallowing and make a mental note. Swallowing, swallowing. Just concentrate on every movement of your mouth and tongue. If you think, oh, this is delicious, then you're attached to the food and unwholesome consciousness has arisen. Without awareness, without observing your object of meditation, unwholesome consciousness arises. I'll be more specific. In my experience, even if I'm trying to practice awareness, I can't avoid being aware of the fact that the world can sometimes be quite beautiful. That's just the way it is. How does one handle the fact of natural beauty without falling into unwholesome consciousness? If we attach to sensual objects, then it's unwholesome. To avoid unwholesome consciousness and have wholesome consciousness arise instead, we need to have right understanding and be aware of every physical and mental activity. Just observe, note, and realize. This is wholesome consciousness, instead of unwholesome consciousness. Some people might say that they don't need to go to church or the temple because they enjoy staying home, eating and drinking and watching TV. But these people don't understand the nature of consciousness. If you're home eating and drinking and watching TV, sometimes you're happy and laughing, other times you're angry, and sometimes you might get sad while watching a movie. This is unwholesome consciousness. You might call it enjoyment, but it is unwholesome consciousness.